Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Do you want to know a little secret? I'm not recording this on a Monday. I'm recording it on a Sunday. But I said Monday because that's when you'll be receiving the video. It's all so timey-wimey. I love it. It's like, this is my TARDIS. Anyway, we're not talking Doctor Who. We're talking DC Universe. And wow, what a week to be a DC fan. They had a table read over at Atlanta for Superman Legacy. We saw a Superman logo, which was the logo to Superman Kingdom Come. Wow, wasn't expecting that. That blew our minds, didn't it? It kind of changed our perception of what this film could be. My theory is that we'll see more than one Superman in this movie rather than a Superman Kingdom Come movie itself. But Boba Talks, actually, who's a very good content creator, who I don't always agree with, by the way, he had this big theory about it being a modern day Kingdom Come movie. I don't agree. Let's see who's right. So a huge week to be a DC fan, a huge week to be a Superman fan, and one thing's for sure, the number one trending upcoming movie is Superman Legacy. It's not Fantastic Four. It's not the MCU. Superman Legacy has got all eyes on it. There's no question about that. And it was the SAG Awards last night. I don't want to talk about awards. I don't care about awards, but Rachel Brosnahan was interviewed by some reporters. She has seen the Superman costume and she says it's magnificent. Well, she would do, wouldn't she? And it's the Superman costume and its importance to this movie that I want to discuss today. Before I do, isn't it refreshing to see a young actor like Rachel saying she's researching the role of Lois Lane? She's reading more comics. She said she knows the comics already, but she's reading even more than she did before. Isn't that brilliant? When Jodie Whittaker got the role as the 13th Doctor, she said she did no research whatsoever. She wanted to go in fresh. Well, obviously Chibnall told her, don't bother about the history of the show because we don't give a shit. So it's clear that WB and James Gunn have told the cast of this movie to keep it positive when you're publicly talking about this movie. Quite rare too, because in recent years, New Hollywood have triggered fans. Recently, Rachel Zegler with talking about Snow White. That's not how you sell a project to the public. And as we've discussed before, Superman Legacy is pivotal to the future of Warner Brothers and DC. But most importantly, Superman. So yes, Rachel said she's seen the costume and she loves it. Now, we know how important the reveal of the Superman costume is to any Superman movie. If we go back to the Superman Returns costume reveal, it didn't go well. They had poor Brandon Routh standing on a plinth wearing the costume. The costume reveal wasn't received very well. Not by diehard fans, not by normies, and not by the mainstream audience, because to be absolutely clear, it's not a good costume. It's a costume I had to come to terms with in the end. I got used to. I do not like the cape. I do not like the little S symbol. And one of my major issues with the Superman Returns costume is that I saw videos of Brandon working out. He was ripped when they pull the costume off of him when he's dying in the film, where you can see how big he is, but that costume shrunk him down. It made him look shorter. It made him look smaller. He didn't look as wide as he actually was. I don't know what Bryan Singer and the costume designers were thinking about. It simply wasn't a good costume. And crazily, that's the costume that the Smallville series finale used. I mean, it was okay. They had it folded up. He did open it up in the end in the last scene. But yeah, it wouldn't be the costume I'd be using for a Smallville series finale anyway. So, the costume reveal and the fact that people didn't like that costume hurt the opening box office of Superman Returns. There's no question about it. Now, I don't know how they did it in 78 with the Superman the movie. If they had a reveal or they just waited until people went to see the movie. Things were very different back then. And I'm 51, but that film was marketed over 40 years ago. And I don't remember the marketing campaign. Please forgive me. I suppose I should do a Google search now and again. Anyway, then we had a really good reveal for the Man of Steel Superman costume. It had Henry Cavill in the costume, crouching down in the safe sequence. And what they did very cleverly is hide whether or not he was wearing the red trunks. Of course, looking back now, we know he wasn't wearing the red trunks, and they were hiding that because they knew it was going to cause a lot of discourse within the fandom. But when you've got an iconic character who wears a recognizable costume, you are not going to please everyone. But the Superman Returns costume certainly didn't please people. Now, the Man of Steel costume, I personally liked it a lot. There's a lot of people who didn't and a lot of people who did. But I think there wasn't the huge amount of negativity for that costume as there was for the Superman Returns Superman costume reveal. The reveal of the Superman Legacy costume is going to be pivotal because we're not seeing a trailer till next year. We're not going to see the film to next year, obviously. So the only thing we're going to get until next year is probably the costume reveal. And rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly, people will make assumptions about this film via the reveal of the costume. Now, I don't expect to have a reveal of the Superman Legacy costume until they finish principal photography. I think for James Gunn, I think it's the right time to do it. Of course, we want to see the costume as soon as possible. And I hope nobody has a long lens. I don't want to see it that way. Because then people are going to say it looks crap. Because it will look crap because it's through the gaze of a long lens. And that's not how I want my first reveal. Now, normally, they're very good at hiding these things. And hopefully they continue to be. Because I want to see the official reveal of this costume. I mean, it's really, really exciting. It's the thing. It's going to give us a few clues about this movie. Because imagine if he is wearing the Kingdom Come logo on the new costume. But even more intriguing, what if he's not? But they had that logo on the script. Maybe my theory is right then. That if that was the case, that there's going to be more than one Superman, versions of Superman in this movie. We will see about that. But yeah, the reveal of the Superman costume is pivotal to what people, because it's marketing. At the end of the day, it's garnish. That's what it is. And people will have, that will make people's minds up about the film. People will either be positive or negative via that costume reveal. And it's obvious that certain Snyder fans, I'm a Snyder fan, I'm a DC Snyderverse fan. I say it a billion times so you understand. But certain aggressive Snyderverse stands are going to come at this costume, whether it's the best costume in the world or not. Now, what are the things that people debate? Because everyone has a view. You've got the die-hard Superman fans that will have a view. You will have the normies who will have a view. It's Superman. Everyone has an opinion about Superman. Even non-Superman fans have opinions about Superman. He's the most recognizable, iconic figure, fictional figure in the world. Pre-existing character. So what do people look for? So there's a huge debate whether there should be the Superman S-shield on the back of the cape, as there was on Christopher Reeve's costume. Personally, I don't mind if there's an S-shield on the cape or not. Now, I think when I look now, if we look at the Man of Steel costume that I said I liked, right? There's one thing, a nitpick about that: the cape. It's too long, and you can even see a bit of sand at the bottom when we're in the desert in that sequence before Faora meets Superman and the army and Lois. If you remember that scene. Apart from that, I love the Man of Steel costume. Anyway, so there's a big debate whether there should be an S-shield on the back of the cape. What do you think? Should there be an S shield on the back of the cape or not? Comment down below, let me know. I'd like to know at the very least, even if I don't have any time to respond to your comments. I'd like to know what everyone's thinking, but I think it's going to be half a dozen of one and half a dozen of the other. I don't think there's going to be 70% who want it that way and 80% who want it. I think it's going to be very, very even. That's the problem. That's why if you're James Gunn, if you're Bryan Singer, if you're Zack Snyder, you've got to do what you think is the right thing. And whether it is the right thing or not, you know, it can make or break your movie. The costume is pivotal going forward. People need to like this costume. There's no question about it. And so you've got the S shield at the back of the cape. Then you've got the trunks debate. No trunks, where are you at? Comment down below as well. Again, I don't care. I think the trunks are very, very risky in this day and age. I think to do the trunks, they've got to be more like shorts, not long shorts, but shorts. If they're more like shorts rather than pants, us English would call them pants. I don't know what you Americans would call them. Underwear, whatever people call them. Don't forget, the Superman costume was designed by Siegel and Schuster back in probably 1937. Obviously, the comics hit the stand. We first knew of Superman in 1938. Well, not me. I'm 51. I'm too young. I wasn't there, but you know what I mean. So it was a long time ago. And, you know, Superman's design and that costume design was based on the old, you know, circus acrobats. So that was a long time ago. And that costume has been designed and modernized and redone so many times in comics and in films and in live action. And there's always going to be an opinion on this costume. Again, yeah, I think the trunks, I'm not opposed to the trunks, but they have to be modernized. And I think they need to be more like shorts than underpants. I don't know what way James Gunn's going to go with this. He's told fans that it's half of the original suit and half inspired from the comics. If you're a regular viewer of Movies TV Mad and the DC Universe Daily, you'll know I'm disappointed that they've never taken an actual design from the comics and used it in live action. It's never been original from the comics. And it doesn't have to be a certain design. Just take a design that you like from the comics. There's plenty, and use it. I think that's what Bruce Timm has always done with the animated movies at the very least. So that's how I would like it, but that's not what we're going to get. So the costume reveal is very, very important. But you're not going to please everyone, right? It's one of those things. Everyone has different opinions. Should it be light blue, light red, dark blue? I hear so much nonsense when it comes to opinions on the Superman costume. And for me, it's more important that it looks good on David rather than what design it is. Yes, there's certain things that are kind of deal breakers. I want a big S shield. I think most of us want a big S shield. We want a bright red cape. We want a longish cape, but not one that drags on the floor. But for me, it has to suit David's body type. It has to, and his face and everything. It's all about colours. It's very, very complicated because don't forget, when you're designing the costume, it's a bit difficult to know what the lighting will do to that costume as well. Because don't forget, when you're making a movie, you know, there's bright lights and, you know, that's a factor as well. Should it be a real cape? Should it be a CGI cape? They normally use CGI capes. I personally would like a proper cape, but it's difficult when you're acting and walking around with a cape. And that's probably why they use CGI capes. Mostly they use CGI capes for the flying, because they can't have a real physical cape there while they're doing the flying and the other CGI elements. So that's not the most important factor. But like it or not, whatever this costume is will go forward with people's opinion of the movie. Because if people, you know, monumentally like this costume, then the perception of this movie will be a positive one. If people don't like the costume, and basically it will send a negative kind of opinion of this costume. What is my hunch? Do I think it will be a good costume? I don't know. James Gunn's using the same costume designer he's used in the past. The problem is with that, this costume designer has never had to do something as iconic as a Superman costume. Think back. Who cares what Star-Lord was wearing, or what Gamora was wearing, or what Drax was wearing? Unless you knew those graphic novels, no one. Who really cared what the Suicide Squad characters were wearing? I liked what Harley was wearing in the Suicide Squad. It was good. It was okay. Peacemaker's costume is cool. You know, they're cool costumes, so I can't judge her one way or the other because I've never seen her. I don't know what else she's done, by the way, so it's hard to fathom. But on the stuff she's done with James, it's very difficult to judge. And I don't know how long he's used her for, this costume designer, if she was just on the Suicide Squad or if she was on all three of Guardians of the Galaxy as well. But when you're designing an iconic costume, the most recognizable costume in the world, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on James Gunn for this movie, but this costume reveal is pivotal and very, very important to this movie. And everyone is itching at the bit, whether you hate James Gunn, whether you claim you're going to boycott Superman Legacy, whether you're excited about it, whether you're shilling it, whether you're hyping this movie, everyone is always anticipating the costume reveal. And as I say, that is what goes forward. That's what everyone's going to think about. That's what's going to be in the posters. You know, fans will mock up their own posters once they see the costume. So that costume is very important. And it cannot be a Superman Returns type situation. It has to be good, it has to be bold, and it has to scream Superman. And as I say, it's difficult. It's like Batman or Spider-Man. People always have opinions. It's like when people talk about the Spider-Man costumes, even since the Sam Raimi days, they all look the same to me in movies, but people seem to be able to tell the difference. It's like the Flash TV show costume. When he used to get an upgrade, I used to think it still looks the fucking same to me. But to a lot of people, they could tell the difference. Obviously, I expect this costume to be dramatically different to the Man of Steel costume. But as I say, I really like that costume. And also, it's about what kind of fabric you use. You can tell that the Man of Steel costume uses a thicker, substance. When you look at Christopher Reeve's costume, it's more of a softer fabric. That kind of sticks to his skin a lot more. But it looks great even today on Christopher Reeve. It's a dated costume. Look at a George Reeves costume. It's dated, but it was just a simple costume and it worked, especially for the man's body type and height. This was the problem with the Superman Returns costume. It simply didn't work. It wasn't the best to look at. As I say, it looked okay in certain angles, but we talk about materials, what materials to use. The material for the cape in Superman Returns was totally wrong, and I didn't like it at all. The costume was wrong. Now, interestingly, Singer did keep the trunks, and I think the trunks ended up being more like shorts than underpants and that. I think the trunks actually worked, one of the few things that worked on Brandon Routh's Superman Returns costume. But it's going to have, and something else about the Superman Returns costume, it's something that's fixated in me. This was supposed to be a sequel of Superman 2. And suddenly this guy's got a dramatically different costume. But if you look at the picture of the Why the World Doesn't Need Superman article, instead of him wearing Christopher Reeve's costume, because that picture would have been taken before Superman went off to Krypton for 5 years, he's wearing the new costume. Well, Superman wouldn't have been wearing the new costume before he left. That's how I see it anyway. So there were continuity errors in Superman Returns. Look, there was a few chinks in that film's armor. That's why I always say it's a movie of great moments rather than being a great movie. But it's still something I enjoy a lot. I don't think it's a crap Superman movie, but that costume isn't great. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to this, and I think you can get clues of a filmmaker's vision of a character of a film when you see an iconic costume design. And I'm very excited to see it. Very excited to see it. I hope it's a costume that I love. But then I'm not going to be as nitpicky as others because I'm not. I care about the costume. I'm a fan. I want it to look great. But ultimately, James has to make these decisions and he can't please everyone with this costume. And I have to be balanced. As I have always said to you, I'm going to be balanced. Even when you think I'm being negative about James and this movie, I am not. I'm questioning him. I'm questioning his situations. And that is my job as a content creator who also loves film, loves story, loves Superman. He's my favourite character in fiction. This is very important to me. And James understands that because his background is being a nerd. That's what he is. He's a genuine nerd. So he understands that Zack Snyder is a genuine nerd. He gets it as well. And, you know, what Dick Donner did on that movie, you know, the original movie with the limitations they had back then, fucking sensational. So I can't expect him to give me the costume that just I want. But my parameters are wider. You don't have to have a logo at the back. I think the cape looks a bit naked. If I'm being honest, I think the cape looks a bit naked without the Superman insignia. I would, if I'm being honest, yeah, if I'm being totally honest, and I won't be angry if it's not there, but I probably would prefer the S shield on the cape. Some people will say no, Mick, and I'm fine. I'm open to that as well. And in terms of the trunks, it depends on the design. Now, the Man of Steel costume is interesting. We talk about the Man of Steel costume. It sometimes looks lighter than darker in other sequences. And this is even clearer to see in Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. Sometimes it looks lighter. When he walks into, if you notice this, when he walks into in the courtroom in BVS, it looks darker. I'm wondering if Zack darkened the lighting, the colour palette of the costume sometimes, depending on Superman's mood. I don't know. Someone should ask him that on Vero, because it was interesting. Sometimes it looked darker than other times. But if I'm being honest, Superman the movie was the first film I ever saw, the first time I ever saw the Man of Steel, apart from in an anti-smoking animated advertising campaign where he was fighting a character called Nicotine. And actually, that was the first time I'd ever seen Superman. Actually, that's the first time in that campaign I'd ever seen Supes. I actually thought Nicotine was actually his nemesis. And when I watched Superman the movie, I thought, why isn't Nicotine in this movie? I've probably told some of you that story before. Kids, right? Anyway, so I do prefer the lighter blue, the lighter red. I'm going to be, I do prefer the costume to be a bit brighter. I'm going to be honest, but I didn't hate them. I want to be clear. I do not hate the Man of Steel costume. I love it. I think it's a great modernized, costume for Superman. And it looks great. And it's right for Snyder's vision. That's the thing. The Man of Steel costume is right for Snyder's vision. And if Bryan Singer wasn't continuing from Superman 2, maybe I would have accepted the Superman Returns costume a hell of a lot more. But you're continuing from another vision. Now, it's very, very interesting when we talk about, the differences between Henry Cavill's Superman costume and Henry Cavill's Superman and Clark Kent to the differences of David Corenswet's Clark Kent and Superman costume. Now, there's a situation here because this Superman is kind of born out from the DCEU, from the Flash in the DCEU, going back in time, changing the timeline. So instead of it being the Henry Cavill Superman, it's suddenly the David Corenswet Superman because of what the Flash did. The Flash has created this DC universe. That's where it's born from. What happened in the Flash movie, has created this new universe. It's the new universe. But is it? Does the DCEU actually exist out there? Is it part of the multiverse? That's a very interesting question to ask. Because I do have a theory about a multitude of Supermen being in Legacy. That's why it's called Superman Legacy. That's my theory. I had a stupider theory before, as I've kind of gone on record saying I thought maybe because it's called Legacy, they would kill Superman at the end of the movie. I don't think they're going to do that. It would be dumb to do that, but we will see what happens. But I think it is very interesting. Is the DCEU active? Or is this now the new main universe, and because of Flashpoint, that DCEU simply doesn't exist? In a kind of way, DCU and DCEU are the same universe, but because of Flashpoint, I suppose, the DCEU is now the DCU. So that universe has changed. So look, it's a fascinating situation, and it's fascinating why James Gunn decided not just to start again, but decided to use the Flash movie to create this new DC universe. Now don't forget, that was Walter Hamada's plan as well, to still call it the DCEU, but change a few things of the universe, one of them being Supergirl instead of Superman in the new universe, Batgirl, and a new Batman, by the way. So they kind of interesting. The plans are kind of different, but the idea is the same, which is interesting as well. Is that a red flag that Hamada's plan and Gunn's plan are kind of similar? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But make no mistake, from the moment that costume is revealed, as I say, I predict, let me be Nostradamus, I predict that it will be at the end of principal photography. The opinion that people go with of that costume will be people's perception of the movie going forward. But before I go, I just want to make a little prediction of what what it looks like Superman Legacy will be. I believe it's a movie that debates whether or not Superman should act unilaterally or not. Now, this is a debate that was had within this Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice movie. The senator from Kentucky was having this debate. She thought that Superman shouldn't act unilaterally. And I think, as we know, there was going to be a little war in the Middle East that Superman may or may not get involved with. And I think they've moved that battle somewhere else. So it's clearly going to be an issue within the film. So I think that's going to be one of the things that goes on in Superman Legacy. Should Superman act unilaterally? Now, I probably will do a proper fuller video on what I think Superman Legacy will be, maybe tomorrow, depending what kind of news is out there and what's going on in the world of DC as well. In terms of these different DC characters in the movie, I believe they're a miniature Justice League, and I think that Clark will interact with these different characters. So probably a mini Justice League. Maybe they're not even called the Justice League yet. Who knows? But what could happen is that these characters could be around Superman every time he's Superman. And maybe Superman's part of a team in this movie rather than a singular hero. And in the comments down below, what do you think of that? We know that James Gunn's groove is groups of characters rather than singular characters. That's his strength. Suicide Squad, the Guardians trilogy, Creature Commandos, The Authority are also in a group. So it could be when we see Superman, he's in a group with these other DC characters that are going to be in this movie rather than saving people on his own. What would you rather? Listen, I'm a kind of traditionalist because my first movie was Superman the movie. I like to think of Superman as this singular hero. I'm fine with Superman being part of a Justice League, maybe in a movie or in other people's stories. But when it comes to his own story and his own movie, I would prefer that he was a singular hero. But I think him being in part of a group in his own movie can kind of work as long as, James creates a story for Superman and a reason for being Superman and, just gives him that story, that device to, tell us the challenges and the stakes of being Superman as well. So yeah, I do prefer Superman being a singular character. In terms of the villain of this movie, that's a mystery to me. You see, we could be in the situation where there's no real villain in this movie, which I think would be a mistake, by the way. Maybe the villain are the governments of the world reigning against Superman. Maybe that's the kind of thing he looks to do. There's been rumours about Brainiac. I'm not so sure about that. I would love to see Brainiac in a live-action Superman movie. As we know, Bryan Singer was planning that in the Superman Returns sequel, Superman Man of Steel, which wasn't to be. We did see an awesome Brainiac, proper comic book accurate Brainiac in the Krypton TV series, but we did see an awesome Brainiac in Smallville. He wasn't comic book accurate because of budgetary reasons, but he was still very, very good. So I'd love that. I'd love Metallo. But the reality is we may not get any of these villains in this movie. Or the villain could be so threatening, so powerful, that's why Superman needs these other DC heroes to be with him in this movie. But one thing's for sure, as I said on the top of the show, all eyes are on Superman Legacy. All eyes are on this new DC universe. That's where the attention is. No longer on the MCU or the Fantastic Four. It's all about Superman Legacy. It's all about Superman. And if James Gunn gets that costume reveal right, it really could be a positive road for Superman Legacy. It's going to be a very, very interesting journey, everyone. Very pivotal for Warner Brothers Discovery, James Gunn, and DC Studios. But as a DC fan, I really genuinely want this to work.